Richard Berthelsen, who is the big-time star today to a certain extent as we bring him in. Ongoing royal baby coverage here. Richard, good to have you with us here. What do you make of what we're seeing today?
Well, I think, incredibly fun to have Prince Harry make that announcement himself. I mean, he couldn't have been more genuinely pleased, and he was his true, authentic self. And I think a lot of people, are very, very interested in this child and this family because of him. He's one of the most popular royals. And he proved why he is today, because he's just truly authentic and very approachable, accessible on this day. I mean, he was even getting along well with members of the media who he's not always known to enjoy.
Yeah, no, good point. And you and I have spoken at length about how this is a very different sort of royal couple than we've seen with others. What happens now, Richard? Just, walk us through what we're going to see over the next couple of days.
Well, like most couples, I mean, they're going to be in a little bit of a recovery moment, especially the Duchess, although she seemed to have had a short labor, although it seems that the birth was perhaps maybe a week or so later than planned. I mean, they have the question of the name to announce. They'll be doing a photo call with a small group of the media that will be released. I would expect that could be as early as Wednesday. The palace has announced that the prince will be going ahead with his engagements in the Netherlands on Thursday for the Invictus Games, which are always a huge priority for him. And after that, I think they'll probably take a little bit of time away from the public eye, and I can't expect we'll see much of the family until closer to the christening.
We're just going to show, if we can, the Instagram announcement that was made. This is sort of a bit of a departure using kind of social media. Sussex Royal, it's a boy. No photos yet. When do you think we're going to see photos, Richard?
Well, the palace undertook that they would release photos from a small group later this week. So I expect that could be as early as Wednesday because, as I say, the prince is off on Thursday. So we'll see that. And I think we may start to hear an announcement about the name at that particular point in time. And of course, what I'm looking to see is whether they announce quite clearly whether this child will ever take up royal duties, because I think there's a very strong potential that the baby, and as it grows up, will stay sort of out of the royal limelight, much like his cousins, the children of the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, and also the children of Prince Edward. So I think Prince Harry, has it in mind that maybe his family can lead a more normal life. And certainly we're seeing in this announcement and certain aspects around it, not in the hospital, not a photo call today on the steps of the hospital. There's an attempt to sort of be a little bit more realistic about a royal birth of this kind and not expect so much of the mother or the baby on the day they're born.
That's something really interesting. Let me just dig deeper. So the idea that they're going to have a conversation about how public or not this prince, this royal, will actually be in terms of the duties. Now give us a sense of what sort of conversations will happen around that and why that's so crucial here.
Well, I think the conversations have probably already happened. We've seen no announcement from the Queen that this child will be elevated to the title of prince or princess. So at the moment, the child's title is the Earl of Dumbarton, which is one of Prince Harry's lesser titles. And ultimately, this child will succeed to be Duke of Sussex after the lifetime of Prince Harry. But I think that they probably made some kinds of decisions about that. And the only time when that might change now in the future is when Charles comes to the throne. This baby would then be elevated in the line of succession and in the royal hierarchy, and they would be entitled to a royal title at that time. But I think, given what's happened with other members of the royal family who've made this decision for their children, to keep them out of the limelight when they're further down the line. Remember, this child is seventh in line. We've never had anyone who is seventh in line come to the throne in the history of this institution. It's always been six or higher. And other people who've been born seventh in line in recent years have really stayed out of the business of the royal family as they go forward. So these are decisions I think they probably will have already taken, and it's just right now really up to us getting the name and how much they're going to divulge about the future plans for this young son.
Okay, let's have a little bit of fun and talk about the names here. And we've put together a couple of graphics. They are by no means exhaustive, of course. There could be other names that are not even on these lists that we're going to show. But, we're hearing Philip and Arthur and Albert and James. And then there are all the odds out there, of course, of a bunch of different names that go beyond those original four. What do you think here? And I understand you don't have a crystal ball, but your take. Do you get any sort of gut instinct?
Well, I think there's two key decisions. Is this couple going to go with one of these dynastic names that you've got on the board there, one of the sort of 7 or 8 names that are very commonly used in the royal family for men, or are they going to go way out of that? And as you saw with Princess Anne's children, I mean, she went with Zara and Peter, and her children have gone, really outside that with Mia and other names like that. So If the child is not going to be within the royal family, there may be a feeling that they can be much more flexible with the names and choose other choices. I think if they stay within the dynastic names, I think Philip is a good possibility. The Duke is about to celebrate another birthday. He's still going strong. Harry is very close to him. Also, Charles could be a very distinct possibility. You know, the Duchess has become very close to Prince Charles since her marriage. He was very helpful to her in that really critical moment, walking her up the aisle and with all of the preparations for the wedding. I think that's also another distinct possibility. They could go with names not used often, like Arthur or Alexander, possibly James, although the Queen already has one grandson whose name is James.
One more thing before we go that I'm curious about. You have been following Prince Harry ever since he was, a very young boy. Your take on the kind of father he's going to be, Richard. In other words, how does he settle into being a parent?
Well, we've seen him quite a bit with children, and he seems to have a real charm, a real way with them. He seems to really have enjoyed spending time with children. Even in Toronto, when he was here, he was making lots of faces and having fun with young people. So I think he's really got that sense about him. He seems to be wanting to have a family. They've had this baby within less than a year, partly perhaps due to the Duchess's age at 37. They've moved quite quickly. I think he's really interested in being a parent, and I think he's going to really enjoy it. And I think he's going to enjoy it particularly if he can give this child as normal an upbringing as possible out of the media lines. And I say, woe betide any photographer or member of the media that tries to interfere or get involved in breaking the privacy and what is legitimate for that child to have as free and open a life as possible in the years ahead.
Great coverage and analysis, as always, Richard. Thank you so much for this today.
Thanks, Todd.
Richard Berthelsen joining us from downtown Toronto.